Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to the Karen Bashford Empowerment Mentor Show. Must get my teeth in place. All right, sorry about that. Now, we talk about a great deal of topics here, and one of the topics that hasn't raised its ugly head before, but which I think most people have some element of, is trauma. And this is interesting because not just trauma where you've come from or where you are, or even what's been foisted upon you growing up. It could be generational trauma. It could be trauma that is passed down through mother to daughter or son. It could be trauma that is secondhand trauma. You've been with a person who has been suffering trauma, and that's created trauma in your life as well. There's a whole many different ways in which trauma can manifest, is there not, Karen?
Yeah, we can actually, if you consider nowadays that children watch violent programs, that's trauma because our mind can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. So we're actually traumatizing our children.
And the trouble is, I think also there's another side to it as well, which is initially you traumatize them, but then you anneal them to it. So they don't even notice and they think it becomes normalized.
Yeah. And that's what trauma quite often is. It's a normalization of you living your life. But underneath that living life is so much that can harm you without you even realizing. Your choices in life are often related to the trauma you've experienced that you're not even aware of necessarily.
So you may not realize that your decision making is kind of jaundiced by the fact that others before you have already gone through something similar, and therefore your reactions to that scenario will be perhaps manifest by that, rather than you may be thinking you've gone through a very careful thinking process, but in fact there's a bias in you towards one outcome. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And if you consider, we learn from our parents.
Right.
So our parents' trauma, so it could be like, even whereas so many women and men for that matter, who have never been told they're loved. That
well, it was
lack of hearing the words "I love you" has a huge impact on a child because we are born naturally expecting our parents to show love to us and to express love. But if that's not happening, that's the trauma we're taking on because they've experienced it, but then we go through it. So we're adding constantly to the same trauma that's already there. So you're just building and building and building.
I think there was a whole generation of people, certainly in this country, where it was, I wouldn't say unfashionable, but unusual for parents to show a lot of physical affection. I mean, my generation, perhaps the generation after me as well. So from the mid 60s to the early 70s, I don't think it was very fashionable to be all touchy feely and cuddly with your children. And the trouble is, if you've got that coded within your DNA, which it does become, you're then destined to kind of pass those tendencies on, aren't you?
Yes, well, I was born in the 50s, and my parents certainly had that inclination to not express love or to actually physically touch because that wasn't done to them. So they're not going to do it to their children because that's something they don't appreciate. And I know of women that have literally chosen to physically do the opposite and hold their children and touch their children and tell them they love them to the extreme. So that's just as damaging in some ways.
That's smothering, isn't it? That's yeah. And that then makes the child scared to do anything unless mum's there to hold their hand. So what we are looking for is the middle path, aren't we? We're trying to find something with a bit of balance and harmony to it. But you guys out there may be thinking, what way can we have to indicate that such an issue exists, and perhaps even a way to promote working through it? Well, we have a toolkit that helps you do exactly that. So, of course, we're referring to, as we often do, sloth or beaver. Can you explain overview of what sloth or beaver is, and then perhaps its relevance to trauma?
Okay, well, sloth or beaver was created because I had to go through a nervous breakdown to understand myself. That nervous breakdown was the result of trauma that I'd received as a child and had continually added to as an adult through relationships, through lack of money, through health issues and such like. So that was how it came about. And basically, it's a map that allows you to see your life journey. And the thing about it, sloth is from birth or just before birth to, say, the age of 30, perhaps earlier, perhaps later. Everyone is an individual, so each person goes through life differently.
Right.
But the aim is that sloth will be with you for life. You never, ever lose sloth, because they're all the beliefs, the behaviors, the attitudes that you've created, the DNA information that's within your body, that will always be with you. And for me, trauma is layered. And layered in the sense of it's layered depending on what it relates to. You might remove trauma from a relationship, but then you'll find trauma remains around money. So trauma is a very much a layered depending on circumstances. But when you're ready, you start acknowledging, you sense that life is not what you want it to be, or you're very conscious that, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep repeating broken relationships? Or financially, I can't move myself forward. There's usually an underlying issue. But when you start becoming aware, you can then start questioning. And the aim of sloth or beaver is to get you to question yourself, but also to question and answer those questions in a group, so that you get insights not only about yourself, but how other people have handled their life experiences, their trauma. And actually, quite often you'll find that they can give you an answer just by having that conversation in a group. You'll suddenly get, oh, well, if I change this, this will happen. Or it's sink in at a level that you're not conscious of. And you'll suddenly think, why am I starting to question this? Why is this happening? And that's where you start creating the change. And sloth or beaver is you starting to create those changes. You start releasing, start acknowledging, starting to let go of all the beliefs and behaviors that are having an impact on you. Obviously, as I say, we never get rid of them all. They will always be layered. So you'll always find that something will come up somewhere. But having started to understand why you do things and how you do things, you can then pick up and realize, actually, I'm repeating something I'm very much aware of that I'd done previously because of a relationship or because of money. So you can start catching yourself using the same words or taking the same reactions, or actually feeling within your body there's something that's not quite right, and asking yourself questions. And that's how sloth or beaver works, because, as I say, you've always got sloth, but beaver can come along and help you clear, as a beaver does, but it also helps you build. So the old beliefs that you're carrying can gradually change into new beliefs. Or you'll find that people around you start behaving differently to you because you've started working on yourself. So consequently, in creating that change within yourself, other people react differently to you. And when you're different, they're different. And so it perpetuates a continuing flow of growth.
Does the sloth in you sometimes prevent beaver from either building or clearing?
It doesn't actually prevent it, it can delay it.
Ah, right.
it causes a situation where you constantly think, oh, why am I doing this? I want to change this. But actually, you don't get there and actually create that change until something happens. And Beaver is forced to dig away at the old beliefs, because that's how it works for us as humans. We reach a point where we go, I'm not doing this anymore. We don't understand why. It could be that we get an illness. It could be that this something happens that we make us stop and really question what's happening in our life, who we are, what do I want. There's always something that will trigger a need to review. And Sloth or Beaver will help then through the questions that are on the cards, and you can utilize to understand what's really going on for you and to be able to then start making changes.
Now, Sloth or Beaver, it contains a board, which is loosely speaking your life's journey. It's from 1 to 100, but it's almost arbitrary. The point is that it represents a movement throughout life. Now, the cards are in many ways the star of the show. Now we have I'm going to get 6. I'll learn this one day. 6 sets of cards.
Yeah.
And covering what topics do they cover, Karen?
Health, money mindset, life, intimate relationships, and business.
Now, you don't need all of them.
No.
You don't need anything. The whole point is not about need. It's about realization that perhaps other layers to what's going on than just what prima facie. But once you have those cards, you pick a card and you read out, you ask yourself the question that's on the card. Yes.
Yeah. The aim is that you ask the question of yourself, and if you're in a group, obviously you read it out. There is a number on each of the cards for you to talk, and that's for you as the person who read the question out or received the card to answer that question. It's to start you thinking differently and questioning yourself. Then it's opened up to the group for just a general discussion. But the thing about it is it creates better communication, because you have to listen, not to respond, but just to listen. That automatically improves conversation, because actually you're needing to just be aware of what's being said. You can go back and confirm, did I really hear you? You said this, or is this my understanding of what you're talking about? It opens up for a far deeper but far more understanding form of conversation, because quite often we just spend our time listening to be automatically give an answer. That's not what Sloth or Beaver is about. It's about allowing you to listen and then respond only after you've had time to digest what's actually been said. So you're not automatically jumping in.
I'm going to make this, I think, a practice for each one of these. I would like you to take a card, please, from the personal relationships one. Let's hear something. And because I'm hoping when people hear the examples, and we'll do different ones, they'll get a flavor for the kind of questioning we're talking about.
Yeah, this is for just personal relationships.
Yes.
Just relationships, not intimate relationships, just personal relationships.
That's it, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so what we got? Okay, so you ready?
No, but do it anyway.
Everyone's childhood is unique, even within a family. It isn't always easy for family members to get along. Your childhood would leave lasting impressions of memories, both good and bad, which shape your beliefs and emotional responses to people and events. If these people and early experiences that influence your relationship with others, it is these people and early experiences that influence your relationships with others. What are your triggers, and how has your childhood affected your interactions with others? Now, technically, you should have 10 minutes to talk about this, but obviously, I don't expect you to.
No. Do you know the interesting thing is, because the thing at the bottom says 10 minutes, some people may find that daunting. Others might think, oh my God, I've got to fit everything in 10 minutes. It's a hard one to know how to judge, but you have to put an arbitrary figure on it. Otherwise, it feels like there's no way of moving on. So let's dissect that. You've made a series of obvious statements as far as at the beginning, and then the fundamental question. Can you read me the fundamental question again, please?
What are your triggers, and how has your childhood affected your interactions with others?
Well, in my case, I think being quite obviously different from as young as I can remember, feeling like, why should I have to conform? Why do I remember somebody saying, oh, Gareth, he always thinks out of the box. And I was thinking, why does it have to be a box? The fact that there's any constraints on thought, to me, has always been alien. And I remember that as young as 4, when I was asked to go and dig, and I realized that the sand pit, the sand kept falling down. So I changed and moved to the flower bed because I found that the earth actually stacked up so much better. Of course, I came back a filthy urchin, but it was logical. It would stay out. I could build really big structures out of earth that you can't really build in sand. So I just remember at the time that the reaction I was getting was, oh, you're something different, you're odd. And later on in life, I feel like I've turned that to strength. But I remember there was a long period of time where it created a kind of feeling of self-isolation. It wasn't so much they were isolating me, but I didn't want to be around them because I thought it would perpetuate that. And I think that was all down to the way I was treated in childhood. I think the way in which my adult life has manifested, the way in which it took me a while, but I suddenly realized that being different's an asset. But it's only when it occurs to you that you can actually do something about it. So
the thing that I'm picking up on is very much there's a logical element to you.
Yes.
You don't necessarily go by emotion, you go by logic. This isn't working because it keeps falling down, so I'm going to go where I can keep it standing. That's logic. Exactly. That's the logic in you. But if you're an emotional person, you could land up getting really frustrated. And that's the kind of relationships you would have with people because you got frustrated so quickly because things weren't working out. Whereas you, being logical, you're more likely to look for people unconsciously that follow that logic.
Well, the funny thing is, Karen, my wife and my greatest love is so diametric opposite to me in every aspect of that. She's not logical at all. She's full of emotion. She's very, very into how the environment affects her and her relationship with the earth and the rest of it. Stuff that I find sort of alien, but I'm totally fascinated by, because
it attracts.
Yes, well, I think so. Yeah. But I have been with people who have been a carbon copy of me, and interesting enough, I found it very bland.
Yeah.
No, it's very bland. It just felt like it wasn't challenging in any way, and it every day was as predictable as the day before. Which, do you know what? I do like being cosseted with safety and knowing how things are going to pan out, but at the same token, tiny bit of danger helps keep life feel like it's worth living.
Well, you're aware of that now, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you go back 20, 30 years,
yes,
would you have necessarily been aware of that?
No, not at all. No, this is stuff that's only happened.
This is so important, because the younger you are in realizing this, your choices are always going to be different. So the life that you our believing is how you're going to be living can actually change very rapidly when you become aware of, well, actually, I'm a very logical person, but logical people I can't stand.
Well, I
Except
do
for
find a lot.
circumstances.
It's interesting. I find myself agreeing with very logical people, but I find that spending long periods of time with them is boring because it's all so
And you don't want boring.
No, it's quite interesting, but no. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this useful. I'm going to do a little bit of show and tell. This is a QR code you notice popped up there. If you want to find out more and indeed purchase one of the excellent Sloth or Beaver toolkits, please follow that link. Now, there are 6 sets of cards, as Karen's already described, covering all different aspects of relationships and so on, but also about your thought processes and why you react to things like money the way you do. And as Karen has said so clearly, the sooner you understand, the sooner you've got choice to make changes or to look at life differently. And you perhaps, I mean, if I'd changed my view of the world and taken the blinkers off, as I think of it, 40 years ago, I think I would. But you can't wish back what would have been. I'm just so happy to be where I am now, where I'm prepared to take the blinkers off and look out of the side and see, rather than just the normal straight path I've been taking. And to all of you out there, you can do the same. But let me just say, Karen Bashford is not just a person who's purveyor of an excellent toolkit to help people generally understand more about why they do what they do and how to perhaps make sensible changes. She also is an empowerment mentor. And part of that, I mean, if you want to find out more about that, go to her excellent website, karenbashford.com, and start a discussion that may well lead to better wellness. Certainly, it will help you understand why you are who you are. And I think that I just still think the old adage, knowledge is power. You've got the power to change things once you understand how they are and why they are. And I think a lot of people get bogged down in, thinking, well, the world's against me. Well, perhaps if you understood how the world sees you and how you see the world, you'd understand that a bit better. You might not want to change, but you might be able to take control of it. You own it in a way like I've owned my own weirdness. And I've only understood that over the last 20 years, which sounds like a long time, but trust me, 20 years goes by in a flat. Doesn't it? It just disappears. Yeah. So look, thank you once again. It's always a learning curve for me. Being on this show. Karen Bashford, empowerment mentor, purveyor of the Sloth or Beaver toolkit. Please do visit it on the QR code above. And until next week, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, try and look after that mental health, and just generally be kind to each other. Bye-bye now.
Bye.